2024. And we need to approve the October minutes. So do I have a motion to?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Hold on, Ben.
Somebody in a second?
Carolina did.
I'll use the computer
All in
real quick,
favor?
so Go ahead,
Yeah, aye.
keep it there.
So the first update is what's going on with Green Communities.
Yep. And we have been working with the business manager over at the Hadley Public Schools, and he's had some success. Surprisingly, some of the folks that he's been trying to get to come in and offer prices haven't been taking him up on his invitation. And what he said in his last email from December 5th, none of the door vendors can do the energy savings calculation. I asked him, I can take a crack at it, and he will. So
that's
once,
like the holdup right now.
yeah, and so once we get some prices back, then we can actually go in front of the select board along with maybe Chris or Annie McKenzie and present this, and then they can use that money for
Well,
that.
we have to send it to Mimi.
Yeah.
And then she sends it, organizes everything and sends it to Green Communities, and they approve it.
Okay.
And then we go to the select.
Can we just back up?
Yeah.
The original guy you were talking about said what? I didn't quite understand.
All right.
Okay,
So
so maybe she doesn't know. the
yeah. So let me back
backstory.
up. Chris Desjardins is the business manager
Mhm.
for Hadley Public Schools.
Okay, yep.
And he's the person who helps with the maintenance of Hadley Elementary,
Gotcha.
of Hopkins,
Gotcha.
and he has been putting out lots of requests for bids,
Right.
for doors, for other
Right,
things,
right.
and
So we got the quotes, but Green Communities wants, we have to show the energy savings that the work will do,
Gotcha.
and
Wow.
what's the other thing
That
that
hard.
he has to figure out?
if there's possible incentives.
Oh,
and
right,
other
and the
things.
incentives.
Oh, wow.
So it's this energy savings part on the door replacements that the companies don't know how to figure out.
Oh, interesting.
So he's gonna try to figure it out.
Okay.
This is really an amazing vetting process. You cannot just take the grant money and go out and spend it.
Uh-huh.
You have to prove that
It's like a
gonna
6-step process.
make it more
Wow.
efficient.
You have to go through.
Yeah, the whole thing is that it's supposed to make the building, it's supposed to be a 20% more efficient
Okay.
endeavor.
Okay.
So we hope we will have a final answer in January.
And that's for
And-
the elementary school,
It's work at both of them.
Yeah.
both of them. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Okay, so next is what's happening with the solar project at the landfill. Actually, we haven't met since we had that task force.
We
like
haven't
the
because
meeting I went to and then the select board
Yeah.
thing. So,
last month our meeting was canceled because of the town meeting.
Right.
right, so actually, were you at town
But
meeting?
then there were things getting voted on related to the solar landfill.
Right,
Yeah.
forming well, we were calling it a task force, but actually Mike Mason said, no, really, it should just be a separate committee, not a subcommittee of ours, but like the solar committee. And so first we had a meeting, Jack couldn't come, but it was Jennifer from the select board office, Kayla from the conservation committee, Michael, myself, Mike Mason, and Jane. Somebody else, someone from human resources, I don't know why she was there. Anyway, so we talked about what this task force should be comprised of, and all, so I don't know, Jack, you wanna take
Yeah.
it from there?
So what Michael says, here are the updates on solar. So select board decision to create this group to study it and see all of that. And still waiting for Jennifer and town council to get the contract signed with Solar Design Associates to prepare application to Eversource. So again, this is a very complicated process. We have to apply to Eversource, and they will have to see if this is even possible.
Well, so the first thing though is that Solar Designs puts together the application. They're gonna write it up.
Okay.
And so
You
half
can
the
keep
money
this.
goes
This
to
is from
them,
Michael.
Okay,
and then
thank
the
you.
other half goes to Eversource to actually do the work. So
Okay.
they will submit the application. And
Gotcha.
so what we decided in that initial meeting with Mike Mason, as far as the solar committee, is, oh, this doesn't list the people. Do you have that?
I wasn't at that meeting.
So I guess what we decided is that somebody from the climate change committee, somebody from the planning board, someone from the select board, someone from the finance committee, and then hopefully like an electrical engineer and a solar, like somebody from Valley Solar or PD Squared, or, you know, like a solar expert that could be like, not a regular member of the committee, but,
Consulting.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they were saying like 5 to 7 people. Oh, and like hopefully just 2 people from the community that are interested and want to be on it. So, Mike Mason sent out this email basically saying, okay, who wants to be on it? You know, and so we kind of decided Michael should be our representative.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's the most
I mean, it's
knowledgeable.
obvious he should be on it.
He really seems to
Yeah.
understand this, and he did all that.
Well, right,
Initial work.
he's so knowledgeable.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really been,
Yeah.
And the hope is to have either 5 members or 7 members, an odd number, but also have some of these other people that can drop in to share some of the information.
Good.
so anyway, then there was a select board meeting that we went to for them to say, yes, we
Right.
should form this committee.
Yeah.
So,
And also for the initial money,
Well, that was town meeting,
that was town meeting.
that
Okay.
we had to vote for
Okay.
the.
Oh.
well, first there was a previous select board meeting where we talked
Gotcha,
about,
gotcha.
you know, the town spending the
Gotcha.
money
So the
to
task
do-
force and then the money was approved. Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right.
So we will see how this all passes, and hopefully Eversource will move things along, and we will know if they say that it's viable or not.
Gotcha.
But right now, that's where it stands.
Gotcha. And what does the town do to try to form a task force? I mean, it sounds like there's some people already given. Okay, that tells us, okay.
Just put it out there.
Put it out there, gotcha.
I guess it's on, I don't know if Jennifer does like an email blast about it
Mhm.
or just puts it under announcements on the town.
Okay.
And if
front
you take a
page.
look, a lot of those are chair people
Uh-huh.
of
Gotcha.
different boards, of the
Gotcha,
planning
gotcha,
committee,
gotcha.
the
Yeah.
finance committee, and all of
Gotcha.
that to try to help
Gotcha.
pull
And-
together this task force.
Good.
And Michael said he knew a couple of people that might, you know, like the experts that we want to be able to refer to. He knows a couple people that he said he was gonna get in touch with to see
Good.
if they were interested.
Good.
So, you know, just, I guess nobody's decided when that committee's gonna meet yet. First, people have to respond to this and say, okay, I'll do it.
Mhm.
So we should email Michael and say, and maybe he did respond to this. Is he on here?
No.
No, I guess Mike Mason said
They got in touch with
here.
the committee members, committee chairs.
Right, so one of us will,
Reach out to Michael.
Michael can do it, or one of us can email back to this saying, okay, Michael Doctor's gonna be our
Sure.
choice.
If you want to do that,
Okay,
that would be best.
okay,
Thanks.
all right. So should we deal with this recycling bylaw thing first?
Well, let's go with Mass Audubon.
I'd really just,
Okay.
okay. No. Well, okay, so this is kind of embarrassing, but,
So we're 4.2 now?
Yeah.
Thank
yeah,
you.
so, we don't really have to take up this recycling bylaw as a
Okay.
committee.
Okay.
As it turns out, like really about 6 weeks ago, I got an email from Kayla of the Conservation Commission, who is on the bylaw committee, saying specifically about the recycling bylaw, basically saying, so I've been looking at this and wondering, looking for feedback and wondering, basically, is it up to stuff? Because did any of you guys open those links that I sent you?
Yes.
And you saw that our our email, or our, recycling bylaw is really scanty. I mean, it's just like the bare.
Mhm, mhm.
And so anyway, when I got this email, I'm pretty sure it must have been when I had pneumonia, and I probably read it and was like, yeah, okay, I'll deal with this in a few days. And then I literally forgot all about it. And actually what brought up me bringing this to the committee, I mean, I literally forgot that she asked that, which is perfect, because as recycling coordinator, I should just send to her what I sent to you guys. So what brought it to my mind to bring it to our committee was, what's your dentist's name? That got in touch with me.
Linda
complaining.
Robinson.
Yeah, so her office is in the McKesson building. And she emailed me a while back, went really frustrated because, you know, she has plastic and stuff from her office, and there's no dumpster out there for, you know, like single stream recycling, and she was very frustrated, and she emailed me like, what can we do here, you know? And so I emailed her back. At that point, I looked at our recycling bylaw, and I emailed her back, and I said, well, still forgetting that I ever got the email from Kayla. And I said, well, you know, this is incomplete. It really should be. I mean, I looked at the stuff that I sent you guys, the Mass DEP fact sheets and stuff, and they all say, you know, it's everybody, businesses, churches, schools, residents, everyone.
And right now, it's my understanding that it just applies to residences.
Right, so we're really not in
Gotcha.
compliance with
Uh-huh.
the waste ban.
Gotcha, so like the restaurants are not under this.
Maybe some of them are of their own volition, but it's not because our bylaw says they
Gotcha,
have to.
gotcha.
And I mean, it's kind of weird because I looked at the state law regarding recycling, and what it actually says is towns and cities and counties, however you wanna do it, may write up a bylaw. It says it should pertain to everyone, but it doesn't say you have to.
Okay,
Because there's already a state law and Mass DEP saying, this is what everybody needs to do. But unless towns tell their people, you know, residents and businesses that Mass DEP says we have to do this, they don't know. You know, I mean, Mass DEP doesn't send out emails about the waste bans to every resident, you know, to every human in the state.
gotcha.
So it's really up to the towns to like let everybody know.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, so actually this morning, I was, you know, looking at the stuff from the meeting, and I was like, I wonder if there's, you know, a bylaw committee actual email rather than sending what I sent to you guys directly to, what's his name? Max?
Jim Maxmowski.
Yeah, and so I went back through my email, and that's when I found Kayla, so I'm like,
Uh-huh.
holy cow, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Like, we don't need to do all this, I just need to send it to her, because she was asking me straight
Okay.
out for it.
All
So
right.
that's what I did, I kind of reworked the email, sent her all the links to the, waste bans, a copy of the, state law, the compliance thing from Mass DEP, and then also I had looked at what other towns are doing. And it's, I mean, I didn't look in a million towns. I looked at Amherst, Northampton, Sunderland, Deerfield, and then for some reason Amesbury came up, and they're like, okay, so this is intense. I think it's awesome. This must be what they sent to everybody in town.
And
I'm-
not just residents, also businesses.
Right, and I mean, look at it, it says, you are responsible for the waste you generate. And then it tells about the waste bans, and they actually have somebody that's trying to enforce it, and they fine people if they don't do it. Which I don't think Hadley
Do
will ever do
that.
that, and we don't have anybody to enforce it anyway,
Right.
but, so, yeah, and so I sent her also a copy of that and Amherst and Northampton, because they have extensive solid waste and recycling bylaws that include hauler regulations and all this
Uh-huh.
stuff.
Yeah.
But just so she could see, well, that's what they're doing. I think it's Deerfield or Sunderland. One of them doesn't have any recycling bylaw at all. And then one has one similar to ours where it's just,
Bare
it's
minimum.
only for residents. So we'll see. I mean, that's what the bylaw committee is doing, is going over bylaws to see what needs to be updated. So I answered it and we'll see what happens.
All right.
Okay.
I mean, it's sort of connected a little bit to a few months ago, Darcy's visit
Mhm.
Mhm.
and the compostable waste,
Yes.
which we should loop that in, that conversation
Well,
into
that's
this.
part of the updated waste ban is, now I think any business that's generating
Some of the
half a ton
Mm.
of compostable stuff a week, a month. Anyway, it used to be a ton, now it's a half a ton, and I forget how often. But, they're supposed to be, having it picked up to be composted. So it's really like, I think in Amherst, it's the Board of Health that lets everybody know about the stuff, and actually, that's who ended up enlightening everybody about the plastic bag ban also.
Oh, wow.
And they ended up answering the questions and all that stuff. So anyway, all right, so enough about that. So is that okay with everybody, or do you don't?
And it seems like it's being handled the right way. The bylaw committee is the
Yeah.
one who's looking at this.
Well, and they sent it to me as recycling coordinator, so I should answer them.
So this is Kayla from the bylaw committee.
Well, Kayla, who's from the head of the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
She's our
She's on the
conservation
bylaw.
agent,
Okay.
and she happens to be on the bylaw.
Same
committee.
person.
So that's
Thank
the
you.
dual role.
Yeah, her
Okay.
name,
Thank you.
Kayla Loubriel, Loubriel.
Thank you.
Here's her email if you guys want to read it.
So it's been a couple of months since we've met, and the big change is that the governor signed into law the updated climate law, which is amazing. And now this is from Mass Audubon. I went to this meeting because they want people to know about some of the changes. There's lots of misconceptions about them, and there's some things that people do know for sure, but this will give you an overview. So this meeting was November 21st, and what we covered is the clean energy and climate legislation. How did we get here? What exactly does it do? What's next? And they had some backgrounds. Look, there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of issues around solar, around the siting of solar, and all of that, and that was one of the bigger controversies with this law. So they had some background information about this. Concerns about impact to nature are partly responsible for the erosion of public support for solar, with many communities now seeking to slow or entirely stop ground-mounted solar systems. You think of communities like Shutesbury that are actually being sued by Coles because they can't put up the system that they want to put up. And how do you decide? Because this is private land and they want to put this large system in.
They wanna-
And there's more to the story too with all of that.
They wanna cut down about 120 acres of woods. right?
Out of, not that I'm in favor of cutting down trees, but it's out of thousands of acres. It's not like there's 200 acres and they want to take down half of it or something, which,
Well, and I think one of the bigger issues is also it's their land. But, how are they going to resolve this? And there was a lot of passionate people at this Mass Audubon meeting who were very, very pro-solar, but anti having any trees harmed, any farmlands harmed, and all of this. So that's one reason Mass Audubon was coming up with this meeting to try to educate people. So this is important. Every slide has something to share, but this in particular. Okay.
is there anywhere in here where Audubon makes it known how many acres of solar?
We'll get there.
Okay,
We will.
yeah.
All right. So they've been working on this climate bill for years. Massachusetts tends to have like a 2-year cycle with the legislature, and they actually made a lot of progress, but they didn't have it all signed by the time the legislative cycle ended. So September 2023, Mass Audubon and Harvard Forest were looking at the growing solar and protecting nature, what you were asking about. Governor Healy signed Order 620 about the infrastructure siting
And permitting,
and permitting.
because it takes so long, so
It
they're
does.
trying to make it so it doesn't.
And that's one thing that came up in this meeting, the length of time with permitting, because if this takes forever, it will never get done. The Senate and House each passed the legislative proposals on climate, and then finally, in November, so really just weeks ago, this was signed into law. So they focused on large-scale forests consistently being cited in many high-value forests and all of that, talking about how many acres of forests, and, you know, really people very concerned about all of this going on. So growing solar, protecting nature. So some of the key report takeaways from Mass Audubon and Harvard Forest. The need to shift solar away from hitting high-value nature lands. Solar versus nature is a false choice, but it's a choice that's often sort of played out. If we count the cost of carbon emissions and the losses of natural resources, the economics of large solar changes, and the way we need to be smart about the placement of other grid infrastructures, including substations. So you have all the solar energy, and often you will need battery storage and other things to handle that.
Right.
And I know that was an issue in Hadley. Although, you know, I do wonder what's going to happen. You know, they weren't allowed, well, I don't know if it's heading to court or not, but they weren't allowed to put these battery storage system off Breckenridge, Mount Warner, that area,
Because it's over the aquifer.
because it's over the aquifer.
It's like,
Um,
most of Hadley is over the aquifer.
But I don't know if the developer who is pursuing this is going to take the town to court. I don't know where that stands, because that's way beyond the scope of this committee.
Right.
All right, so let's take a look. So they compared the three things: current siting, protecting nature sort of mid-impact, and then protecting nature low impact. And they're looking at suitable sites. So this is what Harvard Forest and Mass Audubon came up with.
Who's
and they
Harvard Forest?
That's the state forest in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
So this was allowing solar everywhere. This was with some limits, so excluding prime farmland, however that's established. Essential biodiversity and wildlife habitats, high forest carbon, land with most valuable climate resilience, and then no ground mount solar sited on 99% of forests, floodplains, hurricane zones, open spaces, all that. So they did like this 3-scale approach, and then they took it even further here. Okay. And then, okay, so some of these things that are coming up are really key for this committee and for others to understand. So the siting and permitting reform. So they are reconstitutes as Energy Facility and Siting Board. Sets up a framework and timelines for cities and towns to issue consolidated local permits for small clean energy infrastructure, including 99% of the solar facilities. And then site suitability and all of this. So they're saying the state, is wanting to promote solar, but they also want to be tuned into farmland and forests and other things. So here's the before and here's the after. And this flow chart really shows that the current process just would take forever.
So many steps.
And for anybody here who has had solar on their home, every step when you're working with Eversource or other agencies, you go back to the start of the queue and the cycle starts. It can take months or years or even decades. So right now, it's a very slow process. Okay? And so now this is what they're saying, this is indefinite, the old system, and this they're trying to do in 12 to 15 months. Okay.
So the whole process would
Yeah.
only take 12.
So this is incredibly important for everybody here to hear. Cities and towns retain jurisdiction for permitting of all renewable energy under 25 megawatts. So think about it. The solar project that Michael is suggesting for the landfill would be about 2.5 megawatts, or 1/10 of this, if you have hundreds and hundreds of panels on the old dump. So a 25 megawatt system
It's pretty,
is enormous. Towns control anything smaller than that. And then, bigger systems would end up going through the state and the Department of Energy Resources. So uniform environmental standards, standards for applying site suitability, all of that. And zoning act may no longer apply, allowing towns who adopt site suitability much broader flexibility to zone for solar. So this is probably the most important page of the presentation.
so how would this, or how does this affect, this Shutesbury situation where Coles, wants to build?
No, I'm no
Do we know
expert
how
in
many
Shutesbury, and
megawatts?
I don't know. I know it's a big system, and I don't know exactly what they're litigating over. But, it seems like the town did not want this, and I think Wendell actually had an issue with battery storage in town. So that was one thing that they were commenting about.
If
Yeah.
cities and towns retain jurisdiction for permitting, is that something that is new? This is all new, like the cities
No,
and towns?
I think that's something they kept, like it was already like that.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
And so they kept that to a certain degree, and it's the big ones, that
Okay,
the state.
gotcha.
Yeah. Because I think that was one of the critical things that this turned on. People were very concerned about this siting and we're losing our control. The state's taking our control. We won't be able to say no and other things. And that's not the case. That's not the law that they signed.
Right.
Now, on mega projects, yeah. But on smaller projects, again, they'll do that.
But we don't even have anywhere in Hadley where a gigantic project like that could even.
Well, how many acres is the landfill? It's something like 4 acres?
14.
14 acres. But I'm not sure exactly what Michael was suggesting or proposing.
Well, what Kayla, so at that meeting we had with Mike Mason, she actually had printed out a map, and the basic guidelines. Okay, so it has to go to some other agencies, and they will be the ones to give the final word on how much of that property we can build solar on, basically how close to the river. She said, from what she knows, it can go up to 100 feet away from the river.
Yeah.
But they don't have to, this other stuff has to happen first. These applications have to be filled out. I forget what the other two agencies are, but anyway.
Yeah, and
So, and I guess there's, here's the transfer station. I was thinking the array was all gonna go over here, but there's actually, the town owns land on both sides of the transfer station. So it's conceivable that it could go like that.
well, and I think that's part of the reason that David Phil was first suggesting this idea, and then Michael picked it up and tried to take it further, because this is land that's not forested. This is
It's
land
perfect.
that's
It's-
can't be farmed anymore.
Right,
And if you're looking for land in Hadley where you can't do anything else, you have this wonderful patch of land where you could put solar.
well, and the state's, there's an actual incentive, what do they call it, a brownfield?
Brownfields.
So there's a added incentive financial incentive to build solar on
Yeah.
brownfields.
And you know, there's lots of different ways that the town can go with this. They can lease that out to somebody else, but then somebody else gets a lot of the money. Or there's ways that Hadley can own it. It will require an investment, of course, but then you
But
would
we start
be,
making the money back
you'd be
right
making
away.
about $80,000 a year, which is, you
I
know,
think to sneeze that.
a position at DPW or anywhere else, including benefits. So there's something to be said for that.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's one reason too, there's a number of farmers around here who have solar because it's a big money maker.
But not their whole farm.
No,
You just have
no.
it on part of it,
Right.
which is, I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't,
Well-
you know.
Okay, so site suitability, so on-site suitability. So evaluate sites for development potential, climate change resilience, carbon storage and sequestration, biodiversity, social and environmental burdens. So they added these to the law. So general law 21A, section 30. And then mitigation hierarchy. The executive office shall require project proponents to avoid or minimize, if impacts cannot be avoided or minimized, mitigate siting impacts and environmental land use concerns.
How does this town decide on permits? What's the
It
process?
goes to the planning board. doesn't it?
Planning board?
Planning board is one part of it. I think ultimately it could also end up with the building inspector
Mhm.
for some of the
Well, and conservation
conservation
has to have a
commission.
look at it, and
Yeah.
make sure there's
Okay.
no like
All right.
wetlands
Yeah,
issue or.
right.
so it's a pretty complicated process. Of you need to satisfy lots of different committees. And now the what's next, and the what's next is really interesting because I also had an opportunity to go to a meeting with Joe Comerford a few days after this, and look, whatever is happening at the federal level, the state is sort of all in when it comes to some climate mitigation and all of this. The state's planning to reform solar incentives in the next few months. What that'll look like, nobody knows. DOER, Department of Energy Resources, will develop local guidelines over the next 16 months. They don't have these guidelines to pass out to people, not at this point. And starting in 3/1/2026, remember, everybody, 2025 is coming soon, but in a year and a little bit, towns across the state will begin shouldering responsibility for permitting a lot of solar and quickly.
So it's really good that we're getting our application into Eversource now,
Mm-hmm.
like the sooner the better.
Well, and it's just interesting because if they're opening up a lot of possible spaces, towns have to adapt. And let's see what else is in the bill. So new rules to support EV chargers, natural gas. I don't know some of the details of this. Support of clean energy, including fusion and existing nuclear power. So that often has been brought up in the past about nuclear power.
So I know one thing that was a really big deal about natural gas, and I think this was part of the disappointment, was, so the utilities, you know, who have the natural gas pipes, they want to repair and upgrade their pipelines, their pipes, and pass the cost on to consumers. And I know, who were the senators that were big on this? Anyway, so I guess they included something to kind of neutralize that, so it's not gonna, like, we don't wanna do that. Just, you know, we don't want electricity to become more expensive so that they can pipe in more gas. Anyway, so I think that's what that's about.
Yeah, I didn't hear much about things on this last page at the Audubon meeting, but it is interesting, energy storage targets. Because if solar expands, they're going to have more places to store the electricity. Okay? And then flood risk mapping, this could be particularly interesting for Hadley. We've talked about flooding.
Right.
Hadley's been hit with some serious floods, over the last 100 years, a few terribly devastating floods. And we're right on the river. So if we don't take care of it, it'll be a problem again.
What,
That's not gonna change while the river.
am I remembering that FEMA they are remapping?
It's the department, it's the Corps of Engineers, the Army Corps of Engineers was
And
working with the
remapping,
town to
yes.
remap all of this.
Do you know when we're getting that or when we'll see that?
No,
Okay.
no.
Is that anything we wanna follow up with?
It may be.
Yeah, I think we were periodically kept checking with Carolyn on that, but now, at some point we could ask Mike Mason about it. And
Just as a citizen of the town, I've been really impressed with Mike Mason and being really responsive on a lot of these issues. And he may know about where things stand with the flood risk mapping. But it was the Army Corps of Engineers.
well, that last select board meeting, the last thing on the agenda was he was giving his report, updating all things, and that was on the list, but he practically just skipped it. He said there's nothing new to report on this, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
And then the Special Commission on Extended Producer Responsibility. It's my understanding that that's kind of pushing some things, like for example, if you manufacture juices and you use plastic bottles, you also have to chip in to help with the cleanup. I don't know if anything changed with the bottle bill. I don't think so. I don't think that was part of this particular
it got
thing.
left out.
It did? Okay. But it was really interesting to see Mass Audubon taking such a leadership role in sort of spreading the word about this.
Mhm.
So I just give them a lot of credit for doing that. So other questions, other comments, other concerns about this?
Oh, thank you for attending the meeting. That's really
Yeah.
I was really surprised. I think there were about 100 citizens from across the state who were at this meeting, and it was announced really short notice. And so many people were interested, and for all sorts of different reasons. Some of it were involved with climate change committees or energy committees. Some of it were people saying they didn't always agree with the way the state took it. They wanted to hear more. And that's where it's at.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So that's it. Public comment, you guys have anything?
And we really do ask for public comment to be tuned into things that are relevant to this group, rather than at a national level, more of a town level.
You can't control our content of our public comments.
Well, we say, please confine your comments to topics relevant to this committee.
You can't do that. We can talk about whatever we want.
Well,
Okay.
anyway, so you
All
got
right,
anything
so
to
go
say?
ahead. You've got 3 minutes.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
I just remembered many meetings ago with you mentioning the flood risk mapping. There was someone here and the discussion was about the dams communicating with one another. My first question is there any follow-up or progress on that? Because I really liked that meeting. I thought that was very important. And my second question, in view of the recent election, do you see any change in your committee of what your mission statement is, or your action plan, or your ability to get funding? So those are 2 questions.
Okay, so next month, we'll let you know.
Okay.
Wait, say that again though, because I want to come back to it next month.
Okay, the first question was
It was
the
about the
follow-up
dams, I got
about
that.
the dams communicating, and the second question was in view of the election,
What,
do you foresee
the-
any
New select board.
changes?
the new select board election or
The presidential election,
Okay.
based on the president-elect and some of his statements, do you see any change in your committee with your mission statement? And do you see any change in obtaining grant money for your mission statement?
Okay.
Okay. You've got both of those?
Almost.
Okay. You still have some more time. I don't know if
I didn't
this-
know if you want, you can't answer.
We can't just
Okay.
on the
Okay.
spot. I have no idea what the president will do or the coming president will do. It's really hard to speak.
I say
On
that
that.
because I've heard he is really going to eliminate a lot of the climate projects going forward.
He's
So I
probably
did
gonna
not know if
try,
that
but
would-
I mean, Governor Healy's stance on it is, and so,
Absolutely, I've seen that. That's why
Yeah.
I'm asking, because she's at one extreme and the president-elect is at another, and so I didn't know.
Yeah,
What's-
you know,
I mean, at
it,
this point, we have no reason to alter anything. I mean, nothing's come to us saying, you know, the Green Communities Grant is no longer available
That's
to
my
you,
question.
or
yeah,
you
we're
know,
hoping.
municipal vulnerability stuff. Like, nothing's been taken down yet. I mean, he's not even in office yet.
Right.
I mean, some things
What-
are probably going to happen, but nothing's happened yet.
And Green
So-
Communities is through the state
Right.
rather than the federal government.
I'm using the
I-
word anticipate.
Yeah,
You
I'm
won't
just trying not
have
to
the-
think about it. Just stay focused on what we're working on, and if it happens, it happens.
Okay.
But you know, it's not a problem yet.
Okay.
And I might as well just answer you about the dams, because I'm gonna say the same thing next time. And this is vague. Something crossed my path a while back, and maybe you got this too, in Joe Comford's newsletter, I think, or anyway, there is a group working on that.
Okay.
I was surprised, and I can't tell you the details, but it's our state senators, that there's a committee that's working on the whole dam situation, them working together and fixing them, and should some be taken down, and the whole thing.
And part of that meeting that I found fascinating is the dam owners do not communicate currently. And there was gonna be an effort to get them communicating.
There, so that she's working on it.
Okay.
So and there's been lots of different meetings about this because this is such a central topic to our town.
Absolutely.
We had a meeting actually in this building up front, and they found that in a lot of cases with farmland, even drainage ditches won't go more than 200 feet. So there's just no way to really move all that water back to there. There's not a good way to control it. That's what they said.
The way I understood it, and I may be incorrect, is that the dam owners, if they were communicating in advance, you know, one lowers the dam, one decreases the dam, they all synchronize. The
Well,
other,
right. Like the impression I got was the way it works right now has nothing to do with flood control. It's all about generating electricity.
Mhm.
That's what they're into right now, and that's what they pay attention to. And they don't communicate with each other when we're going to have a flood. They don't.
That's the essence of my question. You
Right.
know,
So I
is-
guess
is that
they are
moving
working on
forward?
that.
Well, and you know, again, going back to the farm forum we held, I know that my brother Joe was one of the people who was sending around a petition to try to get the ear of the dam owners. And I will talk to him on Christmas Eve. I'll see what he came up with.
Okay.
Because I know it is a big deal, but also keep in mind, with the way this town is laid out, it's not always easy to move the water.
But I'm talking dam specific.
I know, but I'm saying moving it from the field to the river with the dams. And also, a lot of the dam owners are electric producers, so they have different objectives than a farm owner.
Well, and that person who came like last year, that engineer,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess this is a meeting you're talking about, and we brought that up. And do you remember what he said? It was like,
They were working
if
on
we
it.
have, well, but he also said if we have a serious flood, the dams aren't going to make that much difference anyway. So,
Yeah.
but it seems like they would make some difference.
It seemed like they would make some
So I was glad to hear that they're working on it, you know, they're looking at that, so.
Not an easy one to solve, ever.
Okay,
Like
thank you.
everything.
Yeah. Tony, any comments?
I wasn't going to comment, but I will comment. My only, I still have to express my disappointment that this committee continues to embrace this awful climate bill that the state has actually signed into law now. I looked at the presentation, and Jack and I disagree on this. I looked at the presentation and see exactly what I was concerned about in the beginning, that this is the state doing away with local control when you're talking about time limits. And you even said, if you're talking about mega projects, are off the plate for us. So in other words, if the state wants to, if the state wants to put a mega project on land in Hadley,
Well, the state wouldn't be doing it.
Hold on.
Okay.
Go ahead, it's your time, Tony.
thank you, we'll have very little say in it, and even the projects that we're talking about, we'll have almost no say if there's time limits. And all those, there was one slide where it was a whole bunch of steps that were taking place, and then there was a new streamline process. Each one of those steps was a protection for us. Each one of those steps was us having a voice in this process, and now that's gone. And so this is something that I see as a really a disaster on this, for the environment, because it's the environment that's going to suffer. It becomes more and more clear to me, at least, that this big solar, big wind, battery storage, it's going to be, that's the real environmental threat, rather than climate change at this point. To me, it's going to be something that we're dealing with for a long time. The piece that you presented was, not to be rude, but I thought it was propaganda from the Mass Audubon Society. That's not the Mass Audubon Society that we grew up with. The National Audubon Society is not what we grew up with. It's now basically a leftist organization that it shills for leftist politics. They don't even worry about protecting birds anymore. Actually, the Audubon Society, they have partnered with the wind industry. They are promoting wind industry, which kills hundreds of thousands of birds every year. We don't know how many birds it kills, because the wind industry actually sued to stop counting, so they wouldn't have to tell us how many birds they're killing. The government stopped studying how many birds they're killing about a decade ago, so we have no idea. But we know it's, even the last studies from 10 years ago was in the 300,000 a year range. We're talking about migratory bats, insects. It's brutal. And the Mass Audubon Society is now promoting that. So that's not, to me, and you even said it during the presentation that was impressive. To me, that's propaganda. That's an organization that has no credibility. So I hope people that are paying attention to this, if anyone's watching this, look into the Mass Audubon Society that was founded, incidentally, by a white supremacist, a virulent white supremacist, and they're still stuck with that name. That was a long time ago, and the organization did do a lot. They had a lot of credibility as protecting habitats, protecting animals. That's all gone. And so to me, it was not a surprise that they're partnering with the state, partnering with the federal government on the national level to promote this. So it's kind of sad to see, and I hope, I just hope you take a look at this and start protecting the environment, people of Hadley, not just the people of Hadley, but the actual environment. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Oh, okay, so, we're done.
No taker for next meeting?
All right, who wants to take notes?
I'll take notes.
Thanks.
Wait, when is it?
It'll be January 9th.
Yeah.
Okay, so a motion to adjourn,
Second?
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, January 9th. I'm good, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, everything's okay.
Yeah.
I've walked in your
Same.
mind
Same
Same
house,
husband.
same,
No, I'm finally over it, but man,
Ex-husband.
it took a while.
married.
I mean,
You mean Joel?
Yeah, it's like,
He's not, we're not married.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I wonder
right,
how
fortunately, I had
Alex
Chris
shuts it
married
off.
it.
like
Yes, that's
decades
nice.
ago.
Right, no,
and
we're
had
just
that
not married.
horrible
We didn't
period.
actually live
Oh
together.
man, feels like a
I thought
knife
you were
in
in
your
the same
side.
house.
I didn't
No,
have
I
any
mean,
of that.
he comes and spends
But I-
almost every, he spends every weekend with
Unbelievable
me.
coffee.
Yeah, yeah,
But he has a house
Where
in
nothing's
Northampton.
coming up, and then
So,
like all
yeah,
sorts
yeah,
of
so-
secondary
Your
things.
Like, both my kids are living in Chicago.
Yeah, so it's
Alright.
finally
Which
all
is really
cleared up,
good.
but it
It
actually
is,
took
but
a couple
some-
months.
We are done with
And
it.
I really
Could be
felt
further.
lousy.
Yeah.
Period.
Could
I
be
mean, I
further, like
ended up at my
California.
Yeah.
doctor's office like every couple of days.
So
like-
I'm actually going there
And
next
they were
week.
giving me all this
for-
medicine,
Yes.
and it
like
ended
10
up it was
days.
viral.
Let me make a
so I
note of
And,
didn't
that.
stick it out.
it's nice, it's
So
a good
I'm
city,
using
it's a
an
very
inhaler.
nice
Oh, it's
city.
very nice.
Yeah.
And I know a big thing
Yeah,
is
and-
for
and
the lungs to
the,
be upright
airplane ticket
versus
has like
walking.
oh, there is $50 to go
Well,
to
and I
Chicago.
also, I would
Oh,
like
why?
that, but
If you leave from
to
Boston,
like lay
it
on
ends up
one
being
side,
more
then
Well-
pay in
pain.
brain.
So we
Yeah.
pay the extra, little
Sometimes
extra
some
to,
people
and
have
lay
different
on the other
opinions
side
on
to leave from
on
Hartford.
driving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And what else have you have been doing like right now? Because you are in North.
You know, work.
Susan, I'll see what I can find out.
Yes, all right.
I'll see
That
if
was an
Joe,
interesting
if
about
Joe
the
has
dams
any
or the-
answers.
I
Thanks,
thought-
Alex.
I thought that was just a very